And welcome to episode number 4 of the Pressbox Podcast, brought to you by our sponsor, Bonus Room Art. Once again, head to bonusroomart.com today to purchase Chiclay art prints featuring primarily sports and movie art, as well as inquire about commissions for custom artwork for you, a friend or family member, or your business. That's bonusroomart.com. Also follow them on Instagram at bonusroomart. In today's episode, we will not have a guest. We'll be having a guest in our next episode. But we'll talk a little bit to start with about the NFL. Talk about last Thursday's Saints-Falcons game, break that down a bit, and then head into some of the what the NFL is facing in terms of concussions and hits and kind of the image they're trying to portray with that and some of the physicality of the game. We'll move into the Tennessee coaching search, which finally came to an end. And we will finish up with a little golf talk, a little Tiger Woods talk, what we saw from him in the Bahamas and what we expect to see from him in the new year. So that being said, let's get right into it. So we're going to start with a little NFL talk, and we are recording this on Thursday night, right after the Saints-Falcons Thursday night game. So we'll start there. Falcons winning 20-17, in spite of Matt Ryan's 3 interceptions, which none of them certainly look good at all. Falcons are still able to win. What were your initial impressions on the game?
Well, obviously, I think the whole game turned on Alvin Kamara getting hurt.
That was early.
That was early in the game, and I think you saw tonight how important that rookie is to the Saints playoff push. I mean, here's a kid that wasn't used very much at Tennessee. I think he touched the ball 9 or 10 times on average a game at Tennessee. Really didn't get significant playing time until the kid that Jalen Hurd, I think is his name. Hurd. Yeah, I think Hurd. The Alabama kid is Hurts. Right. But they almost sound exactly alike, to be honest with you. But until he left the program. So anyway, the kid gets drafted in the 4th round or 3rd round, whatever it was, and now he becomes really the centerpiece to the Saints offense because without him, they became somewhat one-dimensional. Mark Ingram is a good running back, but without that threat of Kamara, the Saints were somewhat limited. Then you go back to what you said, the Matt Ryan interceptions. Matt Ryan is considered one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but obviously he did not have a good game, tonight. He admitted it in the post game. Yeah. And if you take away those interceptions, as we were talking about before, the Falcons may be winning this game a lot easier than they did, and actually had to rely on an interception in the end zone with a couple minutes left in the game.
Right. And Freeman had a good game too, the Falcons running back. He had over 90 yards rushing and a touchdown. But talking specifically more about Ryan, I think, I guess the more you look at this year and his his career, I think last year was more of an outlier than anything else. I mean, he won the MVP last year, but for the most part, he's probably underachieved a little bit as opposed to what you might expect from someone who's, I think, widely considered in the upper echelon of QBs. But yeah, I mean, the biggest takeaway, I guess, from this game tonight is, I don't think either of these teams are a threat in the NFC to get to the Super Bowl. I think that it's going to come from either the Eagles or the Rams.
Or the Vikings.
Yeah, I keep forgetting about the Vikings. But the Saints, they're just not reliable. Something about them. I think that... you see, they're just not reliable. They have to rely on Breeze late in the game, especially when Kamara's out, and he's getting older now too, and he can really only do so much when the defense knows they're going to throw. I just don't trust the Saints still, and the same with the Falcons.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, the Saints are a dome team. Now, they played the dome tonight, obviously, but they're still a dome team, and they're a home dome team more than anything else, all right? You put the Saints in a situation, they went to L.A., played the Rams, and got beat. They did beat the Panthers last week, but that was at home. Tonight they were in a dome. they had a good chance to win the game. But again, like you said, they threw a key pick at the end, made some key mistakes, couldn't capitalize on the turnovers they got from Matt Ryan. The Falcons, they were talking in the postgame about, hey, remember last year you started out 7-5, then you ran the table and ended up going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Now they started out 7-5, they won tonight, but they're just an up and down team. I mean, they don't really impress me as having that total football team that can go out and win football games. I mean, you look at their defense, all right? Their defense is an undersized defense. They're very fast, but they're not the type of defense that can play without the lead. If they have the lead, they can utilize that speed and that quickness. But if a team has the lead on them and they start pounding the football, the Falcons' defense is not good enough to be able to stop that and get the ball back for their offense. So I agree with you. I mean, right now you've got the Eagles at 10-2, you got the Vikings at 10-2, you got the Rams at 9-3. The Rams play the Eagles this week. That's going to be or I guess as of when people would be viewing or listening to this podcast, that game will be over. But regardless, those are the games that are going to start defining who's got the number one seed. And if the Saints have to go on the road or the Falcons have to go on the road, it's not going to be pretty. It really isn't. So I agree with you. I think you're looking at the Vikings, the Rams, and the Eagles. If you look at those three teams and you tell me what you think about this, as much as I'm impressed with Jared Goff and where he's come from last year as a rookie, I still don't know if in a playoff situation, a pressure situation of the playoffs, if Jared Goff can get it done.
Yeah, I agree with that too. That's where I think that you can't count the Seahawks out still. I think
Correct.
If they can get in, which is not for certain, obviously. I would favor the Rams to win that division right now. I think they're going to. But if the Seahawks can get in, you talked about guys that have proven it. I mean, Russell Wilson, say what you want about his playing style or whatnot, but he's proven he can win in the playoffs. So I think that gives the Seahawks an edge, really, over all the three teams we just mentioned, because you have Wentz, Goff, and Keenum. None of them have that experience in the playoffs and really haven't proven it. Now Matt Ryan has, Cam Newton has to an extent getting to the Super Bowl, and Breeze obviously has. So, I think team-wise, those three we just talked about that are ahead right now definitely have the edge, but you can't count out some of these quarterbacks either, just when it comes to experience.
Well, I mean, I would actually give Wentz a little bit of an edge over some of these other quarterbacks. And the reason I say that is because last week they went to Seattle and they lost, the Eagles. But Carson Wentz had a good football game. He played very well. He made some really good throws. And the Eagles did not play poorly. The Seahawks just played better. Okay?
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think, you can say what you want about Russell Wilson, but that guy has put that team on his shoulders, and he's able to make plays when other guys can't make plays. Now, the key for Seattle is their defense is somewhat depleted. I mean, 66% of the Legion of Boom is out, and they're not coming back this year. So the question is, can they defend on the back end like they were able to do during their Super Bowl years? And then the second thing is they really haven't found a running game yet. I mean, they've tried 3 or 4 different running backs, and they haven't been able to settle on one that's been able to give them the push they need from the running back position. So that's somewhat of a question mark. But I think you're right. I think as of right now, the Panthers and the Seahawks kind of control those last 2 wild card berths. And either of those teams, you look at the Panthers' defense with Kuechly and those guys running that defense. And Cam Newton, like you said, he's been there. I mean, for all his faults, he's been there. So really, it's funny that I have to say this, but I look at those 2 teams that might be the 5th and 6th seeds as the favorites to maybe come out of the NFC.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that point 100%. One thing we didn't see a ton of tonight is the physicality we saw Monday night's game. Okay, so I think part of that has to do with the fact that the Bengals and Steelers, which was this past Monday night's game, they hate each other.
They do.
And another part has to do with this game just wasn't as physical. Maybe because it's Thursday night, guys are a little more tired. Even though I think that's a bit overrated, but you look at that game last Monday night. Now, I love that game. I like defense. I like physicality. But then you see, when you watch the game, the commentators, you see, you go online on Twitter, and you see guys, the analysts talking this week, that it was a bad look for the NFL, that it was too violent, that there was too many shots to the head. It just wasn't a good look for them. Now, I know you're an old school guy. I'm younger, but I'm still an old school guy when it comes to that mentality. What's your take on all that?
Gosh, I mean, we could talk forever on that.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, listen, all of you out there, I mean, I know we've got some intelligent listeners out there, but football is a violent game, okay? Now,
correct.
There's no way to get around that, all right? There's no, if you want to take the violence out of football, just play flag football,
yes.
Okay? That's it. I mean, you can't play the game of football and take the hits out. You can't. I mean, I played linebacker. You played football. Our producer played linebacker. You cannot play the game of football and say, "Oh, I'm not going to hit this guy," or I'm gonna take a little bit off because if you do that, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to miss the tackle, all right, or you're going to get hurt.
Right.
Okay. So that's the nature of the football game. Now, the Steelers-Bengals game, I thought, was a well-played football game.
Right.
And, you had some pretty significant hits in that game, but that is the game of football. We talked a little bit about this before we did the podcast, okay? Take the hit last Monday night on Antonio Brown in the end zone when he caught that last touchdown pass, okay? And they hit him, the key there is, given the rules of what's a catch and what's not a catch, you have to control the football in the end zone all the way down to the ground through the end of the catch. So if you're a defender, what are you going to do?
You're going to try to knock the ball loose.
Exactly. And you're going to do everything you can to knock the ball loose. So if you're the NFL and you want to take these violent hits out of the game in the end zone, change the rule of what a catch is. As soon as a receiver controls the ball in the end zone, it's a catch. That way, if the guy hits him, it's not going to do any good to hit him because he's already got the touchdown.
Right.
Okay. But under the current rules, a defender is going to do everything he can to dislodge that receiver from the football.
Right.
And again, I mean, if you're so concerned about violent hits, how come it's okay to hit a running back in the helmet? How come it's okay to hit him any way you choose to hit him, but it's not okay to hit a receiver or a quarterback? I mean, I just don't like the way the game is going. And the second thing I'll say, since you asked me my take on all that, is these media people, all right, who are talking about, it's not a good look for the game, all right? And what was it we were talking about that they won't even show? You can't even find those highlights of those hits anywhere, okay? Yeah. But they're real quick to show every Sunday. They pan the sidelines very long before the game to show you all the guys that are kneeling on the national anthem, okay? Well, to me, that's a bad look for the game, all right? Stop showing that. Showing the hits is not a bad look for the game.
Right.
I guarantee you, if you polled NFL fans out there, 99% of them want to see that kind of stuff. They want to see the game played the way it's supposed to be played.
Right.
They don't want to see guys kneeling on the sideline before the game at the national anthem.
I would agree with that too. But going back to what you talked about with the DBs dislodging the ball, that kind of play from the DBs, like you said, trying to dislodge the ball or just imposing their will is really the only thing they have left. I mean, they've taken so much of they've given so much of the advantage to the offense now that there's not a lot left. Like, I kind of joke around, like if the NFL, and I'm serious, if the NFL were to name me commissioner tomorrow, the first thing I would do is reset the defensive rules to 1973. And that means everything. The way you cover receivers, the way you can hit the quarterback. I'm not talking about blatant cheap shots, that you go out of your way to hurt somebody. I'm just talking about let the defense play. Let them be physical. Like that's part of it, being intimidating the offense. And I'm personally okay with seeing a 10-10 game in the fourth quarter or something like that, where it's just a defensive battle. And I know a lot of the fans may not like that. They like the 34 games and passing and all this stuff. But I just think that's part of football. And like you said, the more and more they favor the offense, I think you just put the defense at a disadvantage and guys get frustrated, and that leads to personal foul penalties, and it's just I just don't like it the way that things are going in terms of just giving the advantage to the offense.
And I think you touched on a really good point right there, that guys get frustrated. I mean, you're exactly right. Defenders cannot do anything. They can't touch a receiver. I mean, they can't put their hand on their shoulder. They can't touch a quarterback. Yeah. I mean, they can't get anywhere near him.
Tonight's game, it was oh my goodness. I forget the guy's name, D lineman for the Saints. He pushed Matt Ryan. He just pushed him, and it was very minuscule. And of course, Matt Ryan fell over, and they threw called roughing the passer. Just by definition, he did not rough the passer. He just pushed him over a little bit.
Right.
That stuff is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And in all fairness to Cam Newton, they get away with stuff on Cam Newton more than they do on anybody else.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're going to, why? Because he's bigger and stronger? I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't agree with that at all. And really, you know, I've heard many NFL, I mean, you can argue all day long about concussions. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a proponent of concussions, okay? Yeah. Because we know today that long-term blows to the head, you know, the more you have, the higher chance there is of problems later in life, okay? But when I played the game of football, I mean, by the definition today of what a concussion is, I probably had 10 to 12 concussions. And back then it was like, oh, you're okay. You just got your bell rung, get back in the game. And if you talk to most of the NFL players, they'll tell you, if you're going to hit me, hit me in the head.
Absolutely.
Don't take my knees out. Yeah. Because if you take my knees out, you take my career out immediately. Right? So these guys know what they're going. They know what they're dealing with. Okay, they understand what's going on. Yeah. All right. So I don't understand all this. You know, trying to take football out of football. If you do, you're going to kill the goose that laid the golden egg, and before you know it, you know we're going to have a bunch of pansies playing the game.
Last point. I think that I don't think the NFL and the league disagrees with the way the football is played. It's an image thing. You know, they want to make it look like they care about the health of the players and all this and that. But then again, it's that image, and we've talked about this, the image of physicality that made football popular in the first place.
Exactly.
Back in the 60s, 70s, there was no other sport like it. You know, you hear the comparison as the modern-day gladiators, which it kind of is. I mean, that's what fans wanted to see. That's what made it popular, the hitting, the physicality, and, you know, the image they're trying to portray, I think they're getting away from what originally drew fans to the game.
I agree with you. And really, I mean, I'm even willing to say that if you want to change, if you want to take some of this out of the game, do away with a Thursday night game before you start trying to change the game itself.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know they'll never do that.
That's a money thing now. Yeah.
Exactly. They'll never do that. So I mean, I would definitely do that before I would start figuring out that I'm going to try to take the physicality out of the game. And the Steelers and the Bengals, you know, you're going to get certain teams that it's always going to be more of a physical game. It always is. Right. I mean, that's just the nature of the rivalry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
They asked Roethlisberger after the game, like right after on the field, like what was his thoughts on the game, and he said it was AFC North football, which you know he's right. I mean, when they play the Steelers and when they play the Bengals and the Ravens, it's going to be like that.
Exactly. I mean, it's like when the Steelers used to play the Raiders back in the 70s. I mean, you know, when the Bears used to play the Packers. I mean, that's just the nature. When you play a team twice a year, every year, and you have guys that have been in the league for 9 to 10 years, you're going to develop that kind of rivalry.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it good. So we'll see how this coming Monday night, when all eyes are on the Monday night game and there's no other games to watch, everybody's watching it with Patriots and the Dolphins, how that'll play out. But
that's a perfect Monday night game for after the Steelers and the Bengals because it'll be 40-0, you know, and nobody will touch Brady. You know,
it's the Dolphins' 5th or 6th primetime game this year already, so that's not a good look for the NFL.
That's exactly right. I mean, you know, let's talk about that for a couple minutes. I mean, you bring up an excellent point. Yeah. If you want, the Steelers and the Bengals game was a better game for the NFL than having the Dolphins on primetime football again 4 or 5 times a year. Okay? I mean, if you want a good look for the NFL, have more games that, like tonight's game. Tonight was a very competitive football game. Yeah. I don't think fans want to watch 40-0 games or the Patriots winning 45-10 against so-called AFC East competitors who are not even competitors. They got to figure out some way to schedule Monday Night Football, which is hard to do. Right. But make these games, take some of these teams. I mean, if they're not ready for prime time, they're not ready for prime time. Period.
I'm all about spreading the Monday night around, where you go to some different sides and give some different teams exposure. But do that in the first 4 to 5 to 6 weeks of the season, when maybe maybe at that point, if they're not a good team, they're still maybe 2-3, 1-3. Things can to the fan, things can go either way, right? It's early, and they're not 4-11 already, and playing another team that's 5-10 or something like that.
That's a good point.
Try to get some different teams in early, and try to rely on some classic matchups later in the season.
And not all divisional matchups are created equal. And what I mean by that is, I know when they set the schedule, they thought, week 13, Monday night, Patriots-Dolphins, division matchup. There's no good division matchup in the AFC East, okay? So forget about that, all right? If you want to talk division matchups late in the season, go Vikings-Lions, or Ravens-Steelers, Steelers-Bengals, Giants-Cowboys on a normal year, not
Chiefs,
this year.
Raiders,
Exactly. But Patriots and Bills-Chiefs, Bills, Dolphins, or Jets does not apply,
right?
Okay?
Right.
I mean, so that's what you have to look at, right? So that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, that's good. So I know we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the news we've been following a little bit and talked about with some of our guests, but why don't you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, and hopefully this will be the last time we have to talk about it. I think it will be, because the Tennessee Volunteers finally did hire a coach over the weekend. Jeremy Pruitt, who is the defensive coordinator for the Alabama Crimson Tide, will be the new head football coach at Tennessee. Pruitt has been the defensive coordinator, as I said, at Alabama. He's been defensive coordinator, I think, at some other schools as well. I think he's been at Georgia. I think he's been somewhere else as well. Most of the defenses that he's coordinated have either been ranked number 1 or in the top 5 in defense. So he's done an excellent job at coordinating defenses. And I think that Tennessee, with all their problems in finding a head coach, I think they decided, look, if Kirby Smart, who was the defensive coordinator at Alabama, can go to Georgia and get them an SEC championship in 2 years, maybe we can use that same model, and maybe we can find take a guy that went to Alabama and had that success, and he can come here and build our program. I think it's a good move from the standpoint of it was better than the Butch Jones hire. I mean, again, Butch Jones was a head coach, but he was not a head coach at a major school.
Right.
This guy's not been a head coach, but at least he's coached in the SEC.
Right.
All right, and other coordinators have had success as well. But I think the interesting story that came about in all this, and again, by the time this show kind of hits the airwaves, it may be resolved, but it's an ongoing story, is that, one of the first people that I think Pruitt is going after is the assistant offensive coordinator / quarterback coach at Southern Cal, to bring him on. And guess who else is at Southern Cal as an offensive coordinator? T. Martin.
Right.
So that's going to be something that Tennessee fans are going to see and say, hey, how come you're not bringing T. Martin with you? So again, it's all going to play itself out. But I think that lends to what we talked about on the last podcast, was that T. Martin's not really ready. Maybe this guy feels like, this other guy is a little bit more ready. So
I think anytime you're going in a defensive direction, not like, again, I'm a defensive guy, I think that's a smart move. I think if you have, and this guy being a defensive coordinator, I think if he can get the defense playing, and however long that takes, 1 to 2 to 3 years, if you can get them playing at a top level in the SEC, that's going to give you a chance to win every game.
No question.
And then, of course, it's on him, like you said, to go out and find, offensive coaches and personnel that are gonna make those players better, and kind of leave that to them, and he can handle the defense. And I mean, only time will tell. I think that, like you said, I think Kirby Smart of Georgia, he should be thanking Kirby Smart of Georgia, because I think that put him in a position to get this job, because you see the success coming from Alabama he's had at Georgia. So I think Tennessee and all programs across the country are kind of looking at that and saying, hey, we can do that. Maybe where's our next guy that can do that? So it's definitely going to be interesting. But like I said, anytime you can get a defensive guy in there, I'm for that. And
I agree.
We'll see how it plays out.
Well, and here's the thing too. I mean, it really doesn't matter. Hiring a head coach is a crapshoot, all right? And what I mean by that is, even if you brought Nick Saban to Tennessee, there's no guarantee that he's going to have the same success at Tennessee. There's a better probability that he will, but we talked about this last time. You take a defensive coordinator like this guy, Jeremy Pruitt. I'm sure he's a fine defensive coordinator. But when you become a head coach, you can have some influence on the defense, but you have to have a guy coordinating that, and then another guy coordinating the offense. Right. And you have to be able to be an administrator. You have to be able to control the program. You're going to be dealing with the media. You're going to be dealing with the boosters. You're going to be dealing with settling disputes, discipline, all those things that a manager deals with in a business or in any sort of an organization. And if a guy's never done that, you're really not sure how he's going to handle that, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be really the thing that has to be seen is can he be able to handle an entire football team as opposed to the 11 guys that are in the defensive room?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he won't be able to do it, but past success is not necessarily a predictor of future success when you haven't been in a certain position.
Well, would you rather have seen them get a guy with head coaching experience?
I would personally. I would have rather them see. We talked about this. I would rather them see a Les Miles or even a Mike Leach, a guy that's been a proven head coach, because you can transfer those skills. Really, what you ought to be doing, and I'm not saying they don't do this because I've never been in a head coaching search myself, but you really ought to be interviewing a guy and say, who are you going to bring in as your assistants?
Right. Yeah.
Because that's really going to be the key to the success is who you got underneath you.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, obviously all eyes will be on him. I mean, how long do you think before he starts feeling some heat? I mean, he needs to come out fairly hot, I would say, and show some improvement right away because as we've seen, the Tennessee fans they're ready for a turnaround, I have to say the least.
Well, I will tell you this right now, okay? I don't have Tennessee's schedule in front of me right off the top of the bat, but I know they play Florida at home, and I know it'll be early in the season, and I know they'll have to go to Georgia right after that. Those are usually within the first 4 or 5 games, okay? So I would say if they lose to Florida at home, there's going to be a tiny bit of grumbling right out of the gate. And if they lose to Georgia, then you're already going to start seeing some grumbling. So I think it's going to depend on how well they perform in those 2 football games.
Right. So, all right. So I'm looking at it right now. They open up with West Virginia at home.
All right.
All right. And they have ETSU at home.
All right.
And then they have the UTEP Miners at home.
All right, so they should be 3-0.
So this gives them a nice little start. Then, like you said, all right, they've got Florida,
right,
and then at Georgia before that bye week. So,
right.
I think those first 5 games will tell you a lot. If they come out 3-2, then you might be thinking, well, it's kind of the same team we've been seeing. They took care of business against some of these lower teams, but they haven't handled their SEC business. If they can come out 4-1, 5-0. There's some room for look for optimism there.
Well, and they're going to have to, he's going to have to bring some more talent in.
Yeah.
They're going to have to get some of these guys healthy that were hurt last year. But I really believe I think they have to come out of those 5 games, really, if they're 3-2, as crazy as this is going to sound to you, if they're 3-2, one of those 2 losses has to be to West Virginia. I don't think they. No, I mean I don't think they could lose to Florida and Georgia.
Right.
I really don't.
Right.
I mean I think if they're 3-2 and they lose out of the gate to Florida and Georgia, the SEC East is in effect gone.
Yeah. And the perception is that nothing's really changed.
Exactly.
At least immediately. So,
That's right. But if they lose to West Virginia, people are going to be beside themselves. But if they can beat Florida or Georgia or both, hey, that's you're on the right track.
Yeah.
Because really, what are you competing for? You're competing for a Southeastern Conference championship.
Yeah, right.
So, that's the way but I think he'll do fine. I really do. I think he's going to do well. I think they're going to have to give him a little time.
Yeah.
And if they do, I think he's going to do just fine.
Yeah.
So, hopefully this is the last we have to talk about Tennessee coaching search for sure.
Right.
But I'm glad they finally got it solved.
Yeah, it sounds good. All right. Finally, let's talk about the 2018 Master Champion Tiger Woods. Okay. I'll go ahead and admit I'm a Tiger apologist. Okay.
Yes, you are.
He's my guy. I want to see him do well.
So just like you let me rant on the Giants, I'm going to let you rant on Tiger Woods.
All right. Well, he just got finished playing this past weekend. Okay, so in the Bahamas at the Hero World Challenge. Okay, which for those of you who don't know about that tournament, it's only a 20-player tournament. It's not an official PGA sanctioned tournament, but it is a real tournament in terms of guys are out there competing. It's for money. It's a real tournament in that sense. So he came out and shot 69, 68, 75, 68. Okay, so which put him at what? I think
8 under.
No, in terms of the field, 9th or 10th or
he was right in the
middle of the field. Okay, so and he didn't come away showing any signs of pain, anything like that. Everything you hear out of him everything you hear out of him, he's claiming that he feels great, probably better than he did last year at this point. And you saw some flashes of some of those classic Tiger shots and putts. I'm all in. I think he's going to do big things in 2018. I know you have a little more measured approach, as does our producer, to what to expect from him next year. So thoughts on that?
Well, we the three of us, you, me, and our producer, talked about this before he even played in the Bahamas, right? And I think my take on it was, one, he's got to stay healthy. Okay, regardless of how he plays, he's got to stay healthy throughout the season. If he stays healthy throughout the season and has some success, I think before he plays his last tournament, whenever that is, I said I think he's going to win at least one more Masters. One, because it's at the same location. He knows the course. He's always played well there when he's played. Right. And I thought he'd win at least one more PGA because, again, I think that suits him a little better than the British Open or the U.S. Open. I didn't think he was ever going to win another British or U.S. for a couple reasons. One, because of the way those courses are set up, and two, because of just his game today and what his game was made of. But I will admit that after watching him play in the Bahamas, he put on a much better performance than he did last year. You know, last year when he came back in the Bahamas, he led the field in birdies, but he was really up and down. He was spraying the ball all over the place. You know what really impressed me about him this week? He was hitting drives right down the middle, over 300 yards. Yeah. I mean, he was outdriving Justin Thomas. He outdrove Dustin Johnson a couple times. He was putting the ball in the middle of the fairway. His ball speed off the tee was right up there with those guys that are ranked in the top 5 in the world. His iron shots, I mean, he hit some 2 irons on par 5s that were just unbelievable shots, all right? And his putting was really, really good. And the one day that he had the 75 was the day that the wind was the worst in the Bahamas. Nobody shot under 70 in that day. So that encouraged me a lot, okay? Yeah. I think that given what I saw last week and given his health again, the key is he's feeling good. He's able to play without pain. If he can keep this up health-wise and, you know, all these other things, his short game and all that will improve with time, I really believe, and I think he's in a better mental state too. See, that's another thing that nobody wants to talk about. I mean, you remember the Tiger Woods of his heyday, right? Yeah. I mean, he was an assassin. He didn't talk to anybody. He didn't associate with any other players. He was out there for blood.
Today, he's still a little too friendly for my taste.
Well, for your taste, he is. But I think he's realizing he's got a second chance. Yeah. You know, he's appreciating more the camaraderie of the tour. You know, he missed all that.
Right.
And I think that will help him become more at peace with himself. And I think, given all things being equal going forward, given the Tiger Woods we saw last weekend in the Bahamas, I'm going to predict he wins at least 2 more Masters. And I think he definitely wins another PGA and maybe even squeaks out a 4th one. So I think it's very conceivable that he either comes within 1 or ties Nicklaus in majors before he's ready to retire.
Right. So, and he's only, what we saw this past weekend, it's only going to get better the more rounds you play. So what do you think's next for him here? I'm looking at the schedule. You know, I think that his next appearance is probably the Farmers Insurance in San Diego.
When is that one? That's
25th to 28th of January, which he played in last year.
Right. I don't think he goes overseas like he did last year.
Yeah, I don't think he does that either. So you got that in late January, and then probably the Genesis in mid-February, which we got a chance to go to last year, even though he didn't play. Not an easy course out there in Riviera.
Not at all.
So that'll be a good test to see kind of what he's looking like at that point. Again, mid-February. You got the Honda Classic. I'm not sure. That's the next week. If he wants to try to put it back-to-back together, that's a possibility.
Palmer at the end of March, right?
Arnold Palmer, yeah, mid-March, 15th or 18th. And then you have the match play in late March.
Right.
And then, Masters first week of April. Yeah. So that'll be something to definitely look forward to this spring.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it's going to depend. I agree with you 100%. I don't think we'll see him again till the Farmers, in the late January.
Yeah, it seems that way. Yeah.
But because it really doesn't do any good to do that. But really, the key is he going to be able to put a couple tournaments back to back?
Yeah. I think he's got to show that, prove to himself anyway that he can do that. His body can hold up, and then that he can do that. Because when you get into the summer now, the way the schedule's set up here, you have pretty much either a major, and you have the players in May now. Is that right?
The players
They
is
moved
still
it-
in May.
It's still in May. Okay.
And next year, 2019, it'll go to March.
Okay, all right. So yeah, this year it's still in May.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think he's going to obviously design a schedule that, in his mind, peaks him for the majors. Yeah, if his body can stay healthy, like you said, the Masters. I mean, you and I both have courses that we feel comfortable at, and I'm sure all of you out there listening that are golfers, you have that one, maybe two courses that you play at all the time. You know the breaks, you know the certain hole suits your eye, you know how things are going to play out, and that's Augusta for him.
Right.
So if he can, remember 2010, 2009, he had his incident. 2010, that was his first tournament back.
Right.
And he competed until the Sunday afternoon. He almost
Right.
won the tournament.
Right.
So I think that, like you said, everything that goes into it is mine. I'm very optimistic. Some people may not be as much, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to this next few months here, because golf was not as fun last year.
Well, it wasn't. And you know, we talked about the NFL and what's a good look for the NFL and all that. Same thing with golf. I mean, you know, Tiger Woods, I mean, whether you like Tiger Woods or don't like Tiger Woods, whether you think he's going to come back or not come back, all right? Tiger Woods made golf what it is today. Before Tiger Woods came on the scene, these purses of these golf tournaments were nowhere near what they are today, okay? They weren't getting the TV ratings that they're getting today. I mean, I grew up watching Nicklaus and Player and Palmer and those guys, but still, golf was an afterthought, all right? Do you know, here's a stat for you that'll blow your mind for all you millennials out there. Jack Nicklaus has won more major tournaments than anybody.
Right.
Okay, he's won 71 tournaments overall. All right. Do you know that his total earnings from golf, his total earnings in his career in golf, just from golf,
Right.
was a little under $6 million?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ricky Fowler won $1 million for the Hero World Challenge this weekend.
There you go.
Yeah.
Ricky Fowler won $1 million at a tournament last weekend with 20 guys in it.
Right.
And if you win a major today, you'll win probably
Almost
almost $3 million.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, why did that happen? It didn't happen because advertisers decided, hey, let's just pour some money into golf. It happened because Tiger Woods came on the scene, okay, and all of a sudden changed golf. And you had more sponsors jumping into the PGA Tour. You had higher TV ratings, which led for networks to compete more for the tour events. It increased the purses, and that's what made golf what it is today. So Tiger Woods has made golf what it is today. So I said all that to say that a healthy Tiger Woods competing as often as he wants to compete and being competitive in tournaments does nothing but help golf and make it stronger than it was. Yeah, golf has a lot of great young players. It did pretty well over the last 3 or 4 years when Tiger's been hurt, because you got the Jordan Spieths of the world and the Justin Thomas and the Jason Day and, you know, Heinrich Stenson and all these guys. You know, Stenson's not young, but all these young guys, okay, that have come on the scene. Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy. But when you put Tiger Woods in the mix with those guys, it's going to make golf even more of an attraction for the average person to watch on TV.
Right.
And it's going to help the game, you know, because a lot of these guys that are in their 20s now playing grew up idolizing Tiger Woods. He's the reason why they're playing golf today.
Right.
So it helps the game in more ways than one.
Right. And I saw this stat on Twitter. This goes to you're talking about the casual fan. This is the FanDuel, the fantasy sports site.
Right.
Says it saw a 22% casual user growth today, and that this tweet is after Tiger's first round.
Right.
In its golf games versus the slate of contests that ran the last 2 weeks combined. So anybody who plays fantasy golf out there, and I know that's not as popular as fantasy football, but obviously that just proves that more eyes are on it when Tiger's in it.
No question. Yeah, no question about that. And I think the game of golf is in good hands with the young guys that are out there. But I think, you know, Tiger's, he's only going to be 42 here in a few weeks.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, he's still got, Mickelson's 47 and
Yeah.
he's won tournaments and won a major in his mid 40s. So I think it's very doable that Tiger can still be competitive. I mean, He showed that last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to say that, or if Mickelson were to happen to win a major this year, people would think nothing of it. And he's 40, you said 47, almost 48.
He'll be 48 this year.
Tiger's got and he's the way he keeps himself in physical shape, assuming he's healthy, but in terms of just his body composition and training and everything like that, he'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, Tiger Woods, another thing, he's always he's always been very protective about letting anybody into his world as far as what he's really feeling. But I think you've seen over the last few weeks when he's talked about how this last surgery helped him, he was in more pain than people thought. I mean, you didn't see it, but he said he was in pain constantly. He couldn't walk. He was in pain when he got up in the morning. I mean, that leads to a lot of problems. I mean, you forget about making a golf swing. I mean, you can't even function properly. So now, he may be a little stiffer because they fused his back. They had to fuse that vertebra or that disc. So he's a little stiffer, but he's pain-free. And that's what's allowed him now to focus on the game as opposed to focus on altering his swing so that it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference. Yeah. That's a really big difference.
All right. So,
but I'm excited about it. I
am too. And believe me, this is not the last time we'll talk golf.
Well, I'm sure
especially as the season heats up here in the new year.
And I'm also excited about some of the future things we've got planned for our podcast.
Absolutely. So again, we didn't have a guest today. You'll be hearing this episode if you subscribe, probably Sunday night because it uploads immediately. But definitely Monday. Our next episode, we will have a FBS college football coach on. That's all I'll say about that right now. I don't want to spoil too much, but we'll talk a little bit about recruiting, coaching changes, and just kind of the general landscape of college football and where things are now and where they might be headed in the future. So I'm excited about that as well.
And we've also got, as you probably can tell from Joseph and I's banter back and forth, we have pretty solid ideas about sports in general. And we also, I'd like to think we also have some intelligent takes on sports. I mean, we've played the games. We follow it pretty closely. We seem to be we hope we're a little analytical when we look at things. But we're anticipating a segment where we're going to have a special guest, maybe from time to time with us. And I'll just say that codename Uncle Joe on our guest, and I think Uncle Joe will give us a good take on his take on sports in general and some of the more regional baseball teams, and he has some interesting ideas, and I think our fans will enjoy hearing from Uncle Joe from time to time. Would you not agree with that?
I agree with that. Could be a recurring guest. Talk a little baseball, see where that goes.
Talk a little baseball. Talk about his philosophy on what to do with left-handed pitchers who don't always throw shutouts every game. but either way, I mean, we'll be able to deal with that.
That's right. Yeah. So like we said, we've got some good stuff coming up. We appreciate the listeners and feedback so far. And again, be sure to follow us on Twitter @PressBoxPod. And subscribe on iTunes as well. You can also hear it on Libsyn and Stitcher. And follow Fox Sports Knox on Twitter as well. They'll be putting up our episodes on SoundCloud if you're not already doing it. And we will look forward to bringing you the next episode.